In the dim, gaslit streets of Victorian Bradford, where coal smoke clung to the air and factory sirens echoed through working-class districts, a quiet and unsettling legacy was already forming, one that would eventually produce Britain's most famous executioner, Albert Pierrepoint. Born on March 30th, 1905 in Clayton, Bradford at 5 Manningham Lane, Albert entered a world where death was not abstract. It was part of family history. His father, Henry Pierrepoint, and his uncle, Thomas Pierrepoint, had already served as executioners for the British state. For the Pierrepoint family, capital punishment was not rumor or legend. It was employment. It was duty. It was identity. Henry Pierrepoint first witnessed an execution at Newgate Prison in 1901, performed by James Billington, a man who would later become his mentor. Soon after, Henry joined the profession himself, serving until his dismissal in 1910 due to struggles with alcohol. In that time, he carried out over 100 executions, leaving behind detailed handwritten records that would one day shape his son's understanding of the job. Those records were not simple notes. They were reflections, cold, precise, and unsettlingly thoughtful. In one entry, Henry wrote that the ultimate punishment of law should be carried out as perfectly as humanly possible. In another, years later, his tone had shifted. Each man dies alone. I now believe the act itself is wrong. Albert grew up in this shadowed inheritance. The Pierrepoints lived in modest conditions in industrial Bradford, surrounded by mills, smoke, and economic uncertainty. After Henry lost his position, the burden of supporting the family fell heavily on Albert's mother, Mary, who worked long hours as a washerwoman. Money was scarce, stability even scarcer. Yet within this hardship, Albert absorbed something deeper than poverty: routine, discipline, and the weight of expectation. At school, he was quiet, precise, and disciplined. A strong student in mathematics, he showed early fascination with structure and calculation. But alongside normal childhood interests, there was something unusual. In his notebooks, alongside arithmetic exercises, appeared sketches of gallows and mechanical diagrams. At just 11 years old, he wrote a line that would later seem prophetic: that he wished to follow his father and uncle into the role of executioner, believing it required steady hands and a calm mind. After leaving school at 14, he worked a series of ordinary jobs: delivery work, driving, manual labor, each one offering little future and less satisfaction. But the pull of family tradition remained constant. In 1931, at the age of 26, Albert applied to become an assistant executioner. The training he entered was secretive, formal, and highly technical. At Pentonville Prison, under senior executioners, he learned that the process was not improvisation, it was calculation. Every detail mattered: height, weight, rope length, drop distance. The objective was not punishment through suffering, but precision, instantaneous unconsciousness achieved through carefully measured force. He practiced using weighted sacks, studied anatomical diagrams, and memorized the mechanics of cervical dislocation. The rope, always hemp, was prepared with exact care. Even the knot placement had significance. Nothing was left to chance. His first official assistant role came in 1932 at Mountjoy Prison in Dublin. Standing beside his uncle, he helped carry out his first execution. He later described the experience not as emotional, but as overwhelming in responsibility, the awareness that error was not an option. Through the 1930s and 1940s, Pierrepoint's reputation grew steadily. He became known for discipline, efficiency, and an almost surgical calmness. He kept meticulous records of every case: timing, weather, last words, and procedure. Prison officials described him as professional to the point of detachment. Executions under his supervision were often completed in seconds, with minimal variation and strict consistency. To him, it was not spectacle. It was procedure. But history would ensure that procedure placed him at the center of some of Britain's most controversial cases. During and after the Second World War, Pierrepoint was called to execute convicted Nazi war criminals in Germany. Traveling under secrecy, he performed dozens of executions at Hamelin Prison, including individuals involved in atrocities at concentration camps. Some showed defiance, others fear, A few maintained chilling composure. Pierre Point recorded them all with the same restrained detail. Back in Britain, he was also responsible for executions that would later become national points of moral debate. The case of Derek Bentley, a young man with severe intellectual disabilities, raised enduring questions about justice and responsibility. So did the execution of Timothy Evans, whose case would later become one of the most infamous miscarriages of justice in British legal history after evidence emerged implicating another man, John Christie. Each case added weight to Pierrepoint's growing internal conflict. One of the most publicly discussed executions of the era was that of Ruth Ellis in 1955, the last woman to be executed in Britain. Her case drew national attention, not only for the crime but for the social and legal questions surrounding it. Pierrepoint carried out the sentence with his usual precision, but the event left a lasting imprint on public consciousness. Over time, the accumulation of cases began to reshape Pierrepoint's perspective. What had once been a job defined by duty and structure slowly became something more complex, an emotional and ethical burden he could no longer compartmentalize. In 1956, after nearly 25 years in the role, Albert Pierrepoint resigned. Publicly, the reason was administrative dispute. Privately, it was something deeper. He later wrote that he had come to realize execution did not serve its intended purpose, not as deterrent, not as justice in the way he once believed. In his later years, he spoke openly against capital punishment. The man who had once perfected the system became one of its most reflective critics. He lived quietly in Southport with his wife, reflecting on a life spent between law and mortality. He died on July 10, 1992. Looking back, Albert Pierrepoint's story is not simply about execution. It is about inheritance, discipline, moral conflict, and transformation. He began as the product of a family tradition rooted in state authority and ended as someone who questioned the very system he had served with unmatched precision. And perhaps that is what defines his legacy most clearly. Not the act itself, but the change in understanding that followed it.